The night was cold. Rain poured from the dark sky of planet Corrales 3. Lightning flashed in the distance, lighting up the tall gates of the human colony. Most people stayed inside, but not Ethan. He was on patrol, just like every night. His boots splashed through puddles as he walked along the fence. The wind blew hard and the rain soaked through his uniform. Still, he didn't complain. Then, he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the storm. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't wind. It was a cry. Deep, painful, and full of grief. Ethan froze. He turned off his helmet light and listened. The cry came again. Closer now. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of loss. He followed it beyond the fence, toward the outer field. There in the mud near a torn plastic tent he saw her. An alien woman, kneeling, soaked, shaking. Her arms were stretched toward the sky. Her body rocked forward and back as she cried like her soul had been ripped apart. Ethan slowly walked closer. He saw she was alone. No weapons, no bags, just a wet blanket clutched in her arms. She didn't hear him until he stepped in the mud. She turned fast, eyes glowing faint green through her tears. Ethan raised both hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." The woman stared at him, breathing hard. He moved slowly, careful not to scare her. "Are you hurt?" She looked down at the blanket in her arms. It was empty. Her voice shook as she spoke. "They took my babies." Ethan blinked. "Who?" She stood weakly, her voice rising like thunder. "Your kind. Humans. Soldiers. They came this morning. Took them from my arms." Ethan was silent. "Why?" he asked softly. She stared at him with wet, burning eyes. "Was told to sign a paper. I didn't understand the words. They said my children were sick, that they would die without care. But they didn't take them to heal. They took them away like property." Ethan's throat tightened. "Where did they take them?" The woman shook her head. "They didn't say, they just flew away." She dropped to her knees again. The rain fell harder. Ethan stood still, frozen. He had heard rumors of medical extractions, of aliens being forced into hidden programs, but no proof. Nothing official. This was real. He looked at the woman. She couldn't even stand now. She was sobbing in the mud, holding on to the only thing left, an empty blanket. He took off his coat and covered her shoulders. She didn't resist. She just whispered, "Why? Why do humans think we're less?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have one. Back at the gate, the other guard called in. "Anything out there, Ethan?" He looked at the woman and at the glowing tag on her wrist. It was still blinking, marking her as unfit for custody. He pressed his radio. Just a stray signal, nothing dangerous. He helped the woman to her feet. "My name's Ethan," he said. "You have a name?" She nodded slowly. "Salna." "Okay, Salna," he said. "Come with me. I'll get you somewhere warm." She looked at him like she didn't believe him. "Why help me?" He met her eyes. "Because you're a mother, and no mother should cry like that." They walked together through the rain. One human, one alien. But tonight they were just two people trying to make sense of a cruel world, and Ethan didn't know it yet. But saving Salna would become the most dangerous thing he ever did. Ethan sat across from the alien woman in his small living unit. Steam rose from the cup of warm broth he gave her. Salna didn't speak at first. She just stared at the hot liquid, like it was too heavy to lift. Outside, the rain had stopped, but inside, the storm wasn't over. Her eyes were tired. Her hands trembled as they held the edge of the blanket Ethan had wrapped around her earlier. Ethan waited. Finally, she looked up. I didn't understand what they were saying. "Who?" he asked softly. "The humans who came to my village," she said. "They wore white coats, spoke fast, too fast." Her voice cracked. "They said my babies were sick, said they needed help. Real help, said alien medicine wasn't enough." Ethan's jaw clenched. And they made you sign papers? Salna nodded. She reached into the cloth tied around her waist and pulled out a soaked, crumpled document. She laid it on the table. Ethan looked at it. The top line read, "Voluntary transfer of custody, alien offspring, emergency relocation order." He frowned. "Did you know what this said when you signed it?" Salna shook her head. "They said it meant permission to treat my children." Ethan's eyes scanned the fine print. His stomach turned. Nowhere did it mention return. Nowhere did it promise. Healing. This wasn't a form to help. It was a contract to take. Salna began to cry again, silently this time. I held them while they took drops of blood. I kissed their foreheads. My daughter asked, "Mama, where are we going?" She closed her eyes. I said, "To a doctor." But the ship flew up. I couldn't follow. I screamed. She paused, breath shaking. One of them pushed me down. Then they left. Ethan sat still, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. "You didn't sign this willingly," he said. She looked up. I didn't know what it meant. Ethan stood and opened his data pad. He searched the system, searched for the transfer number printed on the top corner. Access denied. Classified. He tried again. Same result. He tapped into the patrol logs. No mention of medical visits that day. No record of a transport ship. It was like the whole thing never happened. Except it did, because a mother sat in front of him, and her arms were still empty. "I want to help you," Ethan said finally. Salna looked at him. Why? You wear the same uniform they did." He nodded. "I do. But I didn't take your children, and if I can, I'll find them." Tears filled her eyes. "Even if they say no?" "I don't care what they say." He spent the night digging through old logs, switching networks, searching for clues. One strange file caught his eye. Priority cargo, biological samples, unlisted registry. It had no names. Just a shipment ID and a sealed location tag. Destination, Site M17. Ethan had never heard of it. No colony, no medical center. But he knew one thing. Biological samples meant children, and Site M17 might be where Salna's babies had gone. The next morning, Ethan went to Central Command. He acted calm, spoke to his supervisor, an older man named Officer Drelk. "Sir," Ethan said, "I'm seeing missing info on a custody transfer. ID ends in M17. Can you authorize access?" Officer Drelk paused. His smile faded. "You saw that?" "Yes, sir." Drelk leaned in. "You asking as a patrolman, or something else?" Ethan didn't answer. Drelk's voice turned cold. "Let me say this clear. You dig too deep into M17, you'll lose your badge. And maybe more." Ethan stood, then said without fear, "Then maybe I was never meant to wear this badge." And he walked out. Back home, Salna waited near the door, holding the empty blanket. Again, she looked up as he entered. "Did you find anything?" Ethan nodded once. "Maybe, but it's far. And if I go, I won't be coming back as a soldier." Salna stepped closer. "You don't have to risk this." He looked at her and saw not an alien, but a mother who had nothing left to lose. "I already did." That night, Ethan packed a small bag, took a stolen map, and a name. Site M17, where children disappeared, and where one human had just decided he would not let it happen again. Ethan was no longer wearing his badge. He left it on his locker. No words, no note. He just walked out of the patrol base quietly like it was any other morning. But something had changed. This time, he wasn't walking for orders. This time, he was walking for her, for Salna, and for the 2 children stolen from her arms. He moved quickly through the marketplace past traders, droids, and alien vendors. His eyes scanned the walls for security drones. His fingers touched the small data chip hidden inside his collar. It had one goal: Site M17. No maps showed it. No one spoke of it. But he had coordinates now, and a choice. He bought a small hover bike, with his own savings, and slipped through the outer gates before the scanners could pick him up. In the distance, the jungle hills waited. And somewhere beyond them, so did two children. The journey took hours. The path was rough. Twisted trees, broken roads. Animals watched from the dark leaves with yellow eyes. Ethan's back ached. His hands blistered. But he didn't stop. He kept, seeing Salna's face in the rain, her shaking hands, her quiet whisper, "They took my babies." By nightfall, he reached the edge of a deep ravine. Across it stood a broken fence, tall, rusted, and covered in vines. At the center, behind trees and shadows, stood a small black structure, plain, silent. But Ethan's scanner confirmed it. Site M17. He found a ridge and crawled forward on his belly, careful not to trigger motion sensors. From above, he finally saw it clearly. It wasn't a hospital. Wasn't even a lab. It was a containment camp. Low buildings, gray walls. One landing pad. Ethan zoomed in, and his heart stopped. Behind a chain-link fence. Children. Alien children. Thin. Pale. Sitting in silence. And two of them, twins with lavender skin and silver eyes, sat beside each other. One held a cloth doll. The other held nothing but fear. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "They're real," he whispered. "They're alive." He tapped his wrist scanner to record everything. The camp, the children, the guards. He needed proof. He couldn't break them out yet. Not alone, not unarmed. But if the world saw this, someone would have to act. He returned to his hoverbike and opened a hidden comm link he once swore he'd never use again. The Pulse Line. A direct feed to the galaxy's emergency rights network. He uploaded the footage, then added a single message. "Stolen children, human-run site, Planet Corrales 3, no names, no mercy, help us." But back in the city, someone had already noticed. At the patrol base, Officer Drelk sat at his desk when an alarm lit his screen. Unauthorized comlink. Origin Jungle Sector encrypted ID match and Patrolman Ethan Shaw. He cursed under his breath. He didn't listen. He pressed a button. Send in the retrieval team, full gear, and find the alien woman. She's with him. Back in the jungle, Ethan watched from a tree as two guards walked past the fence. One of them laughed. "They never cry anymore." "Good," said the other. "It's easier when they don't speak." Ethan's fists clenched. He wasn't just angry, he was ashamed. Ashamed that he once wore the same uniform, that he once called men like these brothers, but not anymore. He returned to Salna that night. She was hiding at a small safe house on the edge of the jungle, staying with a healer. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Did you find them?" He knelt in front of her. He didn't speak. He just showed her the video. Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "They're alive," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "And we're going to bring them home." That night, Salna knelt beside a candle. She prayed in her native tongue, and Ethan stood by the door loading a weapon he had buried years ago. This time, he wouldn't run. This time, he wouldn't wait for permission, because deep down, badge or not, he was still a man who remembered what was right, and some hearts can't be silenced. The jungle was alive with whispers. Strange birds called in the dark, and silver-blue bugs danced in the air like tiny sparks, but Ethan moved without sound. Salna walked behind him, quiet as shadow. She had wrapped her long scarf around her head and shoulders, hiding her glowing skin from the sensors above. They were close now, closer than ever. Hours earlier, Ethan had shown her the satellite scan again. An old cargo ship, half buried in jungle vines. No ID, no name. But Site M17 used that ship as its core. It wasn't a real building. It was a wreck turned into a secret camp, and someone, somewhere, had decided that alien children belonged in cages inside it. At last, they reached a ridge. Below, it sat the broken ship. Its body was cracked, metal rusted and bent. 3 guards sat outside, laughing around a heat lamp. 2 drones hovered above, scanning the area. No one looked afraid. They didn't think anyone would come here. No one ever had. Until now. Salna dropped to her knees when she saw the fence. Behind it, children, dozens, curled up in corners, lying on metal floors, some too weak to move, and there, her twins. Her daughter leaned against her brother's shoulder, holding a toy made from scraps. Salna's hand flew to her mouth. Her chest rose and fell fast. Ethan touched her shoulder. I know. She looked at him, eyes full of fire and fear. I want to run to them. I know, he said again. But if we do that now, they'll shoot us both. Ethan opened his pack and pulled out the stolen device. It was small, a square transmitter. Old, illegal, but powerful. It had one purpose, stream live. He planted it in a tree, aiming it at the camp, then activated it. Across the stars, on private feeds and black market networks, the stream went live. Alien children behind bars, guards laughing while they kicked food trays, and the label at the bottom of the footage, Property of Human Research Command. Ethan sent one more message. They said no one would care. Prove them wrong. Ethan Shaw, former patrolman, Colony 3. Then he turned to Salna. It started. She looked at him. But how do we get in? He pointed to the side of the ship. There's a maintenance hatch. Old tech. I worked on these wrecks during training. I can open it. Together they crawled through thick vines and mud. Ethan used a small tool to unlock the hatch. It clicked open with a slow creak. The air inside smelled of rust and fear. They moved down a narrow hallway. Everything was dim. Pipes leaked. The floor groaned under their steps. They heard soft voices, coughs, a child crying. Ethan peered through a broken wall vent and saw a row of cages. In the nearest one, a small girl with violet skin reached out with both hands, as if dreaming of her mother. Salna covered her mouth. Her knees shook. Ethan whispered, "They're here. Stay behind me." Suddenly, footsteps. A guard turned the corner. Ethan froze. The man raised his weapon, but Ethan moved first. Whack! One hit with a metal rod knocked the guard cold. Ethan dragged him into the shadows. "We don't have much time," he said. He found the lock system and plugged in his pad. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't fast, but the cages opened, one by one. Soft gasps, blinking eyes. Children looked around in silence. They didn't cheer. They didn't smile. Because they weren't sure if it was real. Salna rushed forward to her twins. They stared at her, then cried out together. "Mama!" She dropped to her knees and pulled them both into her arms. Tears soaked her face. "I found you," she whispered. "Mama's here." Ethan turned away for a moment, blinking hard. He looked down the dark hall, where more boots were coming. More guards. And this time, they had heard everything. He lifted his weapon, took a deep breath, and stood between the children and the shadows. "Come for them," he whispered, "and see what a human heart can really do." The guards came fast. 5 of them. Heavy boots slammed against the metal floor of the broken ship. Flashlights swept the walls. Weapons were raised. Ethan stood in the hallway, alone, just outside the room where the alien children huddled behind him, including Salna's twins. He didn't hold a gun. Not anymore. He had tossed it aside. The live broadcast from his hidden drone was still rolling. Every second was being streamed into the galaxy. He raised both hands high and stepped forward. One of the guards shouted, "Get down! On your knees!" Ethan didn't move. "I'm Patrolman Ethan Shaw," he said calmly. "Badge ID 9021. This is a peaceful intervention. These are stolen children, and you're all on camera." The guards froze for a moment. Then their leader laughed coldly. "Nobody's watching. Nobody cares about these animals." "Then why are you shaking?" Ethan asked. The man's smile faded. Inside the chamber, Salna held her twins tightly. Other children moved closer to her, like they knew something good was finally happening. Her daughter asked, "Is that man one of the bad ones?" Salna whispered. "No, love. He's one of the rare ones." Outside, the guards moved in. One lunged. Ethan didn't run. He sidestepped, grabbed the man's shoulder, and flipped him into the wall. Old reflexes, military training, still in his bones. Another raised a blaster. Crack! Ethan grabbed a pipe from the wall and smashed it into the man's arm. The weapon dropped. The others hesitated, but Ethan didn't attack them. He stood tall, breathing hard, staring them down. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "You're afraid of what I've shown the galaxy." Suddenly, an alert on their comms incoming transmission. A loud voice came through. "To all personnel at Site M17, cease activity immediately. You are under investigation by the Galactic Ethics Board." The guards looked at each other, confused, angry, terrified. Ethan pulled out a small projector and activated it. A large blue screen floated in the air. Faces from across the stars appeared. Lawmakers, ethics officers, journalists. The lead voice continued. "We received your footage, Ethan Shaw. Every second. We saw everything. Help is on the way." Salna heard it from the other room. Her heart burst with relief. She whispered, "You did it." Some guards dropped their weapons and ran. Others dropped to their knees. But the captain, the one who mocked, Ethan, pulled a knife from his belt and charged. Ethan turned. Too late. Salna saw it happening. She stood and stepped forward, but someone else moved faster. A small body rushed from the shadows. Her son. The little boy jumped in front of Ethan. The knife stopped inches away, then dropped to the floor. The captain froze, not because of the boy, but because of the camera. Still live, still watching, still recording every move. The captain stepped back slowly and dropped to his knees. Tibam. Fight was over, without a gun, without a single shot. Ethan had won. He turned to the boy and picked him up gently. "You okay?" he asked. The child nodded, holding his mother's scarf in one hand. "Were you scared?" Ethan asked. The boy shook his head. "Not really. I knew you wouldn't let him hurt us." Ethan smiled softly. "Neither would your mom." Hours later, the camp was surrounded. Galactic officers arrived, doctors, journalists, lawkeepers. Children were lifted out of cages and wrapped in warm blankets. Some smiled. Others just held hands quietly. Salna stood beside Ethan, her arms around her twins. One reporter asked Ethan, "Why did you risk everything?" He looked at the camera. "I didn't risk anything," he said. "They're the ones who forgot what it means to be human." That clip went viral across 10 systems. Millions watched. And in those silent jungles where evil once hid, a single man without a weapon lit the galaxy on fire. The cameras were gone, the children were safe, the camp had been shut down. But Ethan Shaw, he was behind bars. The cell was small, cold, silent. He sat on a metal bench, hands resting in his lap, eyes staring at the floor. His uniform was gone. So was his rank. He wasn't Patrolman Ethan anymore, just a man the government now called traitor. 2 guards passed his cell. One whispered, "That's him." The other scoffed, disgraced, turned on his own. But Ethan didn't look up. He didn't regret it. Not for a second. At the same moment, far beyond the walls of the prison, something else was happening. Thousands of people, human and alien, gathered outside the colony's main hall, holding signs, holding candles, holding pictures of children, signs that read, "He protected the innocent. Not a traitor, a hero. Give him back to us." And in the front row, holding both her children close, stood Salna. Her face was calm, her eyes sharp. She didn't chant. She didn't yell. She just waited. Inside the prison, Ethan's cell door opened. Officer Drelk entered. The same man who once warned him not to ask questions. He looked tired now. Older, smaller. Ethan stood. "You here to gloat?" he asked. Drelk shook his head. No, I came to tell you something. Ethan said nothing. Drelk held up a datapad. On it, a live news stream. Thousands chanting Ethan's name. The ethics board demanding full review. Other officers being fired, arrested. The world saw what you did, Drelk said, and they chose you. Ethan frowned. So they're setting me free? No, Drelk said. They're demanding it. Later that evening, the prison gates opened. Ethan stepped into the light. He squinted, eyes not used to the brightness. But before he could take a step, someone rushed into his arms, Salna. She didn't say anything at first, just held him, then she whispered, "Because of you, I have my children again." Ethan's voice cracked. "I miss them." "They talk about you every day," she said. "They made drawings. Want to give you one?" Her daughter shyly stepped forward, holding a small paper. A picture of Ethan, standing in front of a spaceship holding hands with two little alien kids. The title read, "Our Hero." News crews tried to push forward. Reporters shouted questions. Drones buzzed in the sky. But Salna led Ethan through the crowd gently, past flashing lights, past shouting voices, to a quiet spot beneath a tree, away from everything. There, the twins sat beside him. One curled up against his side. The other whispered, "Mama says you don't wear a badge now." Ethan nodded. "That's true." The girl tilted her head. "Then what are you?" He looked at her, then at Salna, then at the stars. "I don't know," he said. "But maybe I don't need a badge to do what's right." That night, an official letter arrived, signed by the Galactic Ethics Board. It read, "Due to the undeniable proof of human rights violations and the bravery of one individual who disobeyed orders to do what was right, we release Ethan Shaw of all charges and recommend full pardon with honor." But Ethan didn't return to duty. He didn't ask for a medal. He didn't want to be a symbol. He only wanted one thing, to keep the promise he made. And in a small home near the forest's edge, with a garden, a roof, and two laughing children, he did, because even if the law called him a traitor, a mother called him family, and that title, he wore it with pride. The sky over the colony was different now. No more heavy silence. No more hidden ships. No more stolen cries. Instead, there was laughter. And it began in a small home built on the edge of the forest. Inside, the walls were filled with color. Hand-drawn. Pictures, flower decorations, and stars made from paper. A quiet fire warmed the air. A pot of stew bubbled gently. And at the table sat 4 people, a human man, an alien woman, and her 2 children, once taken, now home. Ethan sat with his sleeves rolled up, helping the twins build a model ship from wooden scraps. Salna watched from the doorway, smiling softly. This was the life she never thought she'd get back. A peaceful life. A full one. Later that night, as the stars blinked above, Ethan stepped outside. He stood beneath the same tree where he was first welcomed home. He still remembered everything. The mission, the risk, the anger, the cell, and the moment Salna whispered, "Because of you, I'm a mother again." That moment had changed him forever. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Salna joined him, wrapping her scarf around her shoulders. "It's peaceful tonight," she said. "It's been a long time coming," he replied. They looked up at the sky together. After a long pause, she asked gently, "Do you miss your old life?" Ethan shook his head. "No. Back then, I followed rules. Not my heart. I had orders, not a reason." She smiled at that. "And now?" she asked. He looked at her. "At first I thought I saved your children," he said. "But the truth is, they saved me." Inside the house, the twins were still awake. They tiptoed out onto the porch with something wrapped in a cloth. The girl giggled. "You forgot this." Ethan turned. "What's this?" They opened the cloth. Inside was a hand-carved wooden badge, painted with red, white, and gold. It looked like the old patrol badge, but this one had alien symbols added by the children, and, instead of officer, it said protector of family. Ethan held it in both hands. His eyes stung. "You made this?" The boy nodded. "Because you still protect us, even if you don't wear the real badge." Ethan crouched down, hugged them both, and whispered, "This one means more than any I ever wore." Salna stood behind him, her hand resting on his shoulder. The boy looked up and said suddenly, "Mama, is he our father now?" The world went quiet for a second. The wind paused. The stars seemed to lean in. Salna bent down, held her children close, and said gently, "He's the one who chose us, and we chose him too." Then she looked into Ethan's eyes and smiled. "Yes, he is." Time passed. The colony changed. New laws were written. New guards were trained. Camps were shut down. Voices were heard. Truth was told. But in this little corner of the galaxy, the biggest change came not through war, but through one act of kindness. One man who saw pain and stepped in. One woman who lost everything, but believed again. And two children who taught them both what it means to be family. And every year, on the day they call the Day of Return, Salna and Ethan take their children to that old tree, the one where it all changed. They sit beneath it, and they tell the story. Not of war, not of politics, but of hope. Hope, because a human stepped in and changed 4 lives, forever.